Right, I'm going to get started. I'm going to talk about RB Kitaj. Well, there's a picture of him looking a bit kind of disconcerted, don't you think? But anyway, he was born Ronald Brooks in Ohio in 1932. He had a Hungarian father who left his mother, Jean Brooks, shortly after he was born. And she was the American-born daughter of Russian Jewish immigrants she worked in a steel mill and as a teacher. She married Walter Kitaj, a Viennese refugee chemist, and Ronald took his surname. Both his mother and his stepfather were non-practicing Jews, and his Jewish heritage became, well, the major concern of his life, I think, as he went on. So he served in the United States Army for 2 years in France and Germany, and moved to England to study at the Ruskin School of Fine Art in Oxford, which was paid for by the GI Bill, where soldiers who'd served were given some money to do things afterwards. Then he went to the Royal College of Art in London in 1959-61 and met up with David Hockney and several other artists who were to become quite famous as well. David Hockney became a lifelong friend, and this is what he said about David Hockney later. David Hockney is my oldest friend, the most popular artist since Warhol, the best natural draftsman alive. At various times we've influenced each other, this Bradford bombshell and I. Anyway, this is one of his earlier paintings, which sold in 2013 for £31,000, which is very modest, isn't it, in terms of famous modern artists, I'd have thought. But I love that picture of him with the cat on the right. One of the things I think about Kitaj's paintings is that, you know, when you first see a painting, you kind of like it or you don't a bit. There's an element of that. But also things can grow on you the more you look at it, or put you off it, I suppose, as well. And I think that the issue with Kitaj's paintings are there is a lot of explanation that goes with him, which I think by and large is helpful. So I'll just give you the sort of description that this one, which is called An Early Europe. The three figures appear to signify a common location in North Africa where white European, black African and Arab meet. The understanding widens to a sign of European 19th century Orientalism, and I'm not sure what Orientalism means in this context. The activities with the depiction of some of the hands suggest a sexual scenario. The fourth area of the plane is a depicted running figure you can see on the right, apparently moving from the central image towards the image of the landscape. He must have started the painting with the reproduction of the Canova sculpture, which you can see in the bottom right. The images of three women represented in carved marble. So you can see the kind of complexity that his paintings seem to require or seem to attract, or which he gives them himself. I think on this case, it's not himself who gave that description. Now, this is one of his most famous paintings, The Wedding. Yeah, that's David Hockney at the back.
Yes. Oh, I would have got the wrong person.
So
I really like that.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It depicts the wedding of Kitaj and the American artist Sandra Fisher. The couple first met in Los Angeles, where Kitaj was teaching. And then he got to know her again in London later on. He wrote the following text to accompany the painting's exhibition in the 1994 Tate Gallery retrospective, to which I will come on to later because it became very important. Sandra and I were married in the beautiful old Sephardic synagogue founded in London by Rembrandt's friend. Anyway, aside from my children and the rabbi in top hat, Freud is on the left. That's the painter, Freud. Auerbach in the middle, another painter. Then Sandra and me and Hockney, best man, to the right of us. But the guy who leads the bride to the altar, Auerbach, has to be a Jew. So that's him in the blue. kippah. Those Orthodox rabbis had never seen such a gang under the chuppah. Sighs from Hell, 979, sold for $293,000, and one of his most expensive paintings at the time in 2014. This is the about his 1994 retrospective at the Tate Gallery, which was supposed to be for, you know, the summation of his life's work. Suddenly the picture went dark. The painter's life is cracking. It's a really good description of it, that. So it was his crowning glory, this. On the one side of the battlefield were the art critics of the British press, who seemed to have lined up to outdo one another in destroying Kitaj's claims to attention. Facing them were Kitaj, then 64, and his friends and fellow British painters, Freud, Hockney, Hodgkin. Some critics accused Kitaj of being a pseudo-intellectual because they found his references to various writers and philosophers pretentious or obscure. They also disliked his use of manifestos and annotations to explain his paintings. Kitaj rejected this label and defended his intellectualism as a vital part of his artistic vision. The critics complained about the perceived lack of emotional drive in his paintings, describing them as curiously arbitrary, with line and colour laid on like orders received. There was an assault on his overbearing ego of the artist, with some critics demeaning Kitaj as too literary and too Jewish for British taste. They really did a job on him. It didn't just, they did an ad hominem attack. I always like that phrase. It means attacking the person, not what the person has produced. Actually, I'll come back onto it because it had very important consequences, including the death of his wife, which he blames on that, because she was already ill and she took it more badly than he did. This is the painting, which is the most expensive of Kitaj's paintings. And this one was sold for $5.29 million in 2008. His provocative allegorical paintings tend to be the most coveted and pricey at auction. And this was the most provocative of all. It was the greatest act of revenge. It was about his revenge against his critics, which I think you can see there, really. But it's interesting as well, looking at the polemics of his paintings, is this one, which is an earlier one, a very early one of his, The Murder of Rosa Luxemburg. Last thing that he wrote, a sort of manifesto, really, called The Confessions of an Old Jewish Painter. Because what mattered to him was Jewish culture as represented by the Warburg Library, which was evacuated to London in the late 1930s before Hitler took over. What it might mean to be a Jewish artist was important, as he described him, that arguable creature, became his central obsession, giving him his subject matter, but the shaping his approach to image making and to drawing. And this is one about everybody's familiar with Rosa Luxemburg, the left-wing activist who was murdered in the 1930s, I think it was. Now, this is RB Warburg, but he's the one who really saved an enormous amounts of paintings. Kitaj claimed that Warburg was to art history what Einstein was to physics and Wittgenstein was to philosophy and Freud to the study of mind, Einstein to film and so on. Jewish founding fathers of modernism. There's a very strange photo of him with Hopi Indian in 1895. Ooh. And Warburg as a Maynard. So this was the autobiography written by him, Confessions of an Old Jewish Painter. And this came out of his ill-fated Tate retrospective in 1994. Now, this is an interesting one. I was 22 and he was 27. I was a little provincial boy from Bradford who had never been abroad. And he'd sailed the 7 seas, you know, came from New York and had seen the world. I hadn't. He was much more sophisticated, and I saw that he drew very well. And I think one of the things, if you actually look at Kitaj's output, his drawings really show his draftsmanship, very much so. He bought my drawing for £5. That's a lot of money. I could live for a week on £5. And from Kitaj, about Hockney, he switched to his gay culture as I began on my Jewish culture in its first forms. So they were both exploring aspects of their own personality, and they were very, very close.
But if you look at that picture on the left of Auden, and you didn't know who it was, you wouldn't recognize him.
No, I wouldn't.
It doesn't look like him at all.
No.
Well, maybe he was being more modernist than that.
Well, I don't know.
Possibly.
It's a bad drawing, I think.
The main criticism centered on they complaint, as I said, they complained about his emotional drive, and it led to a disastrous reception by the London press, which ultimately impacted on Kitaj and his work. That's him and his second wife, Sandra Fisher.
That's interesting.
In his manifesto to the so-called Tate Wars, as in I accuse, Kitaj wrote, "Art terrorists tried to kill me off, and they got her instead," meaning Sandra. "You think not? Think again. In a National Gallery film about me, Hockney said about Sandra's death that if you love someone, you could be more hurt than your lover who is being attacked. Many good people agreed, some did not. An aneurysm, like a heart attack and a stroke, can be triggered by stress." So he always blamed those art critics for that. What I'm going to show you now are just some various paintings that he's done without any particular commentary on them, because I think they're a good selection of his type of works to give you a better flavor of it. So this is
That's very Chagall.
I like this one, which is an exhibition for a museum poster. I think it's very atmospheric. Well, I really like that one anyway. I think it's really nice.
It's very 1940s.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
looks like The Third Man or something like that.
I think more
Yeah.
American style. What's he called? Chandler, is it anyway? This was one called
noir.
This is called The Architects. I like this one as well. Different areas on it. This one I think is.
Oh my goodness!
This is called The Refugees. I like this one called Faces by him. This one, But this one I thought was interesting.
It's great. It's
one of those
blue tree from Australia.
Yeah, I was thinking
exactly.
It's a
That's
blue
just what I
tree.
thought.
Mindfulness.
What a link! What a great link that was, eh?
Yeah, it's gorgeous too. It's lovely. That I like that.
And here's another one, which again is quite an interesting one. This one is a bit weird. There seems to be based a strange kind of water sports thing going on. And this is another interesting one. By the way, he was an inveterate womanizer, and he cheated on all his wives and so forth. But that's just seemed to have been one sort of type of artist then, didn't it? So, but I just thought I'd mention that.
Men.
Yeah. I apologize on behalf of all men.
So you should.
This is Juan de la Cruz, 1967. I like this one too. Don't know why it's got cross on the middle, but there you go.
Why is there a naked lady walking the plank in the background with a chap dressed a bit like a pirate
With stiletto heels.
Yeah.
She's walking the plank.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I like the little bubble on the right as well with somebody's face on. I don't know what that's doing.
Oh yes. Oh, that's a bit.
Now this is quite a good one. It's a Philip Roth,
That's a good drawing.
the artist. Another one who was a bit like that too.
That's very Lucian Freud.
It is, isn't it?
He's nicking from all the artists around at the time.
Oh, right, okay. Well, maybe he was, and this is the life drawing he did in 1958. Who did he pinch that from?
I'm not sure.
Da
But
Vinci?
it's still a bit loose here. Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Now, this is an interesting one. It's called If Not, Not. And it's probably his most complex and interesting work. The artist stated that painting it related T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland. The poet is depicted at the bottom left wearing a hearing aid. The building in the top left corner is the gatehouse to Auschwitz. Below it lies a scene of cultural disintegration and moral collapse. The stagnant water, the dead and blackened trees, and the books scattered around the landscape speak of death and destruction. A Matisse bust, coincidentally, a variant of the one owned by the gallery, that's the Scottish art gallery it comes from, lies broken in the centre foreground. The small figure of the man in bed holding a baby is a self-portrait.
These things, but I noticed that the women are naked and the men are not in a lot of these paintings.
Absolutely, Jackie.
Yes, and you know, that to me, that
Well,
is
My comment about him is changed your views of each of the paintings that's come up since, hasn't it? Anyway, the last one that I showed you, it's was the painting If Not Not. It's the bad reception in his 1994 Tate retrospective caused him to move back to America. He went back to America and never came back. And this is a comment about that last one, which is also done as a tapestry, a huge tapestry in one of the London and the British Library in London. Why destroy an artist so cruelly? What was gained? Kitaj stood for a sense of history, a belief in drawing, and an intelligent modernism. Are those such terrible qualities in an artist? If not, will be remembered when Kitaj's bad reviews and their authors are long forgotten. So you seem to have a great variety of whether you like his stuff or not. I think it's grown on me the more I've been looking at it. But as an individual, he was certainly flawed.
I find it quite interesting that you mentioned about the tapestry, because while I was looking at those paintings and the use of colour and the way so many things are layered, different things, it reminded me of the tapestries of Grayson Perry as we were going through. I thought, this looks like something Grayson Perry might have done. And so that's quite interesting that he did actually do a tapestry.
Well, or a tapestry has been done of his painting, I think it's more.
Right.
I think it was after his death they did it.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing for me is different use of color. It's kind of like, it's very striking in whatever genre it uses. Unusual colors, actually, you know, but they're very interesting.
Bye-bye. Merry Christmas to everybody who's not here tomorrow.
Yeah, all the very best.
Yes.
Merry Christmas,
Bye.
everyone.